ganda naman.
Gain the knowledge and skills that would make them modern women. Paz Marquez Benitez was the first president of the Philippine Women's College. Jose Abad Santos was its first chairman of the Board of Trustees. Francisca Tirona Benitez was the second president, and with her husband Dean Conrado, guided the school from a house on A. Flores Street to its iconic Taft Avenue campus. In 1932, the college became a university, making PWU the first university for women in Asia founded by Asians. It provided a space where innovations in education flourished, and young people were encouraged to be the best that they could be. For over 100 years, the Philippine Women's University has been known as a leader in quality education. In 1934, PWU moved into its main campus on Taft Avenue, and since the 1970s has been co-educational. Located in the heart of Metro Manila, it is easily accessible by public transport and surrounded by affordable housing. Today's PWU offers undergraduate and graduate courses in several fields of study. Its business and management programs are responsive to the needs of industry, using evolving technology for global competence. PWU graduates excel in arts and sciences, education, social work, and diplomacy. Its fine arts and music programs have produced outstanding graduates through a holistic education that treasures heritage as well as excellence. PWU has pioneered in fields such as food science, nutrition and dietetics, medical technology, pharmacy, and nursing. PWU continues to play an essential role in producing graduates who possess the skills that make them competitive in the country and anywhere in the world.
Good morning. This is Unveiled, the food industry in challenging times. We will now start the program with an opening prayer and the national anthem. Good morning! Again, welcome to Unveiled, the food industry in challenging times, a three-part webinar series via Google Meet, presented by the Philippine Women's University and the School of Food Science and Technology. We are now streaming via Facebook Live at the PWU official page. This is the first session of the series entitled In Transition, Food Safety in the Food Chain. We are your facilitators for this morning. I am Nadya Patricia Sauza, a graduate student in Masters of Science in Food Science.
And I am also Innah Fajardo, also a graduate student in Master of Science in Food Safety Management. First of all, we would like to acknowledge our esteemed guest joining us for today. Mr. Marco Alfredo Benitez, President of the Philippine Women's University, Dr. Emerita Zornosa, Director of Graduate Studies, Dr. Felina Young, Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs, Dr. Menchita Dumlao, Program Chair of Information Technology and Head of PWU Technology Integration Team, Dr. Ligaya Braganza, Program Chair of School of Food Science and Technology, Dr. Pablo Ignacio, Dean Emeritus of School of Food Science and Technology, Professor Maria Divina Alcazabas, Professor in Food Science, and Professor Rosalinda Lorilla, Professor in Food Safety. Good morning, everyone. So, to our viewers from the Philippines and abroad, welcome and thank you for joining us for today's morning session.
Before we begin, here are the webinar rules and guidelines. Please ensure that you have stable internet connection. There will be a 15-minute question and answer session after each speaker's discussion. So type in your questions at the comment box for the Q&A portion. The link for the evaluation form will be posted at the end of the webinar. Submission of completed evaluation form is required to be eligible for the e-certificate. All participants will be prompted to answer the poll question that will appear on your screen.
So, to kick off today's webinar, please welcome Mr. Marco Alfredo Benitez, the President of the Philippine Women's University, for the opening remarks.
Dr. Felina Young, University Chancellor and SVPAA, Dr. Ligaya Braganza, Program Chair of the School of Food Science and Technology, hardworking faculty, alumni, students, and all of those watching on our social media pages, good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to all of you today to kick off your two-day webinar series entitled Unveiled, the Food Industry in Challenging Times. Congratulations to the organizers. Staging an event in this manner despite the challenges posed by the pandemic is already a feat in itself. First of all, my sincere prayers that all of you are safe and well during these times. The effects of this pandemic, already in its 8th month, have been tremendous, physically, emotionally, psychologically on all of us, some more than others. And while there are still many challenges being faced by all of us, when it comes to this new mode of flexible learning, there's nothing more gratifying than seeing our students, whether in the graduate or undergraduate program, be able to establish some form of normalcy, progress in their learning, and even thrive by using opportunities such as this, not only to highlight what they've learned, but also impart these insights to others by means of technology. We are truly in challenging times. Globally, COVID-19 cases are nearly 38 million, with deaths close to 1.1 million worldwide. New surges have been reported in Europe and Asia, where many had thought the virus was contained. Here in the Philippines, while it seems that we have trended downwards this October, averaging less than 2,500 confirmed cases per day, we are still ranked 18th in the world in terms of COVID-19 cases. But with the tremendous impact the community quarantines have had on our economy, the government seems to have no choice but to continually begin to ease restrictions, despite our numbers, just to prevent further economic decline. The food industry, like many, has been severely hit by the effects of the community quarantine. With people forced to stay at home during enhanced community quarantine, foot traffic in malls, restaurants, bars, and other food establishments basically came to a halt. With transportation and logistics greatly hampered by the lockdowns in Metro Manila, food supply was significantly affected during the first few months of ECQ, and many food suppliers, farmers, fishermen suffered huge losses, with their goods not able to reach the markets they were intended for. Many establishments, particularly small and medium enterprises, were forced to shut due to the health risks to their personnel and also as a way to preserve what resources they had left. It was only as Metro Manila transitioned to MECQ and then GCQ did we see some form of a return for the food industry, particularly for the basic commodities and grocery items. But for the food service industries such as restaurants, coffee shops, fast food chains, we are still extremely far from pre-pandemic levels. To date, many of those that have closed will no longer reopen. We've heard of even the big fast food chains closing hundreds of stores because there's basically not enough revenue to sustain operations. While those establishments that have opened have had to rely on innovative ways to ensure the health and safety of their personnel and their customers. These practices include daily health checklists for personnel, constant wearing of PPE, implementing strict protocols to limit contact between food handlers and the products, touchless transactions, maximizing takeout and delivery options to compensate for the lack of dine-in clients, and a host of others just to ensure that they do not become a vector for the virus. I'm sure our speakers today, industry practitioners involved in middle management, as well as some of the decision makers in their respective organizations, have spent countless hours thinking of how to adapt their companies to the needs of the situation. With studies showing that the SARS-CoV-2 virus is transmitted through respiratory droplets and survives on surfaces for hours and even days, practicing and communicating the safety of food preparation, packaging, and handling has been a key component of the response of many food industry practitioners. But safety is only one aspect. The other is how to maintain the quality that these food brands are known for when the food is consumed via takeout or even an hour after preparation when delivered. Here again, we have seen the industry step up to develop innovative solutions, like selling your favorite fast food items in frozen packs in groceries, supermarkets, and even online platforms like Lazada and Shopee, or even selling them in do-it-yourself kits, similar to what Shake Shack has done, complete with cooking instructions so that we can approximate the same quality had these items been served in store. Again, the food industry is a prime example of the resiliency and adaptability of Filipinos in the face of this once-in-a-lifetime pandemic. And while there is still a lot of uncertainty with respect to how this pandemic will end, there is no doubt that we Filipinos, working together in food, education, retail, and across all industries, will come out better and stronger from this crisis. Thank you once again for this opportunity, and I look forward to learning from today and tomorrow's sessions. Stay safe and God bless.
Thank you for that inspiring message, President Benitez. Now we are indeed ready to begin this webinar series. To our 432 viewers in Facebook Live and Google streaming link, welcome po. Before I introduce our speaker, we are inviting everyone to answer a quick poll. All right, we are flashing the link that is menti.com, menti.com, or you can scan the QR code on your screen. Okay. When you are in menti.com, you can key in the digit code 6048645 for the poll question. Again, you can access the first poll question via menti.com, that is menti.com, or scan the QR code flashed on your screen. Okay. So please go into menti.com Our code is 6048645. Our first question is, what does AMR mean? You have 1 minute to answer the question. Okay, what does AMR mean? So our choices are antimicrobial resistance, antimicroorganism resistance, automatic resistance, or anti-mutagenic resistance. Again, what does AMR mean? We have antimicrobial resistance, antimicroorganism resistance, automatic resistance, or anti-mutagenic resistance. So to answer this pulse survey, you can access it by going to menti.com, that is menti.com, and use our digit code 6048645. Okay, what does AMR mean? You have 15 seconds left po. So we have a total, so far we have 78 po answers. And our leading answer is antimicrobial resistance. Time's up. Okay. So we have, out of the 84 answers, we have 88% of them answering antimicrobial resistance, 10% antimicroorganism resistance, and 2% anti-mutagenic resistance. We will reveal the correct answer after the talk. Thank you for joining us for this short poll survey. For our first speaker for this session, in transition, food safety in the food chain, she is a licensed chemist working as a quality assurance manager of the Regional Fisheries Laboratory of the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, Region 4A. Her team works on the analysis of antibiotic residues of the National Residue Monitoring Program to ensure food safety of fish and fishery products for export and local consumption. Currently, she is taking her degree in Masters of Science in Food Science at the Philippine Women's University. Ladies and gentlemen, here is Ms. Joy A. Azarias to talk about the foodborne antimicrobial resistance in the food chain. Welcome, Ms. Joy.
Thank you, Ms. Nadya, for that colorful introduction. Good morning, everyone. Yes, I am Joy Azarias, and I will be discussing about foodborne antimicrobial resistance in the food chain. So first of all, I would like you to look at these pictures. Imagine yourself going to the wet market or to the supermarket and to buy ingredients for your next meal. And I'm sure when you see this nice looking fresh produce, you would really be enticed to buy, right? Mapapabili talaga tayo. But what if I tell you that this can contain lots of drugs? Or even worse, it may contain contamination with microorganisms. So, before we go further with this food safety issue, let us look at the outline of my presentation. So, for my presentation, we will go to the introduction. We'll focus on the foodborne AMR, the big deal with AMR, the authorities taking action against AMR, the Philippine food industry, and how do we slow down AMR in the food industry. As an introduction to antimicrobials and AMR, of course, we have to acquaint ourselves with these substances that or agents that are used to reduce the possibility of infection and the body's extreme response to this infection, or what sometimes they call it as sepsis. So these are categorized into two. First are the medicines or the anti-infectives, and other one are the biocides. Oh, the medicines are those that are capable of inhibiting the spread or they kill the infectious organisms. And for the biocides, they are intended to destroy, to deter, or render harmless, or exert a controlling effect on any harmful microorganism. So the anti-infectives are further classified as antifungals, antiparasitics, antivirals, and antibacterials. And for the biocides, they can be for pest control. So usually these are the pesticides. For the preservatives, these are the food additives. For the antiseptics, these are the substances that are directly applied to the human skin. And for the disinfectants, these are directly applied to the non-living surfaces. But even with the presence of these antimicrobials, there's still the burden of foodborne diseases. So according to WHO, every year foodborne diseases can cause 1 in 10 people that fall ill, and that is equivalent to 33 million healthy life years lost, 420,000 deaths, and 1/3 account for the children. For the Southeast Asian region data, more than 150 million people fall ill and more than 175,000 die. From that, 60 million children fall ill and 50,000 die. And we have to take note that in this region, more than 1/2 of the people account for the infected and those that die from foodborne illnesses. Another paper published by the American Association of Pediatricians, they have identified the most common pathogens associated with foodborne disease outbreaks. And as we can see in the image, majority come from meat products, and they are microbiological in nature. So here we can see Salmonella, Campylobacter, Listeria monocytogenes, and even for the crops, still the Salmonella and the Listeria come in. And for the Philippine data, here is the data from DOH. So event-based surveillance report for 2017, they have these verified health events by disease. So we can see here that large portion of these illnesses come from food and waterborne diseases and the zoonotic diseases. So these zoonotic diseases are those that are from animals and then transferred to humans. So one of the reasons of these events may be because of this antimicrobial resistance. So what is this antimicrobial resistance, or AMR? It is a process in which microorganism evolves to become either more or fully resistant to an antimicrobial agent, which could previously treat it effectively. So many years back, the spread of these microorganisms, or especially these pathogens, can be easily controlled by over-the-counter drugs or ordinary cleaning agents. But this time, you need to apply it in higher dosages, higher concentrations, or maybe you look for other alternatives. So another thing is that there is an emergence of these superbugs, these microorganisms that were able to survive the treatments and develop resistance to these antimicrobial substances. So for us to understand how microorganisms survive with these incomplete treatments and how they do continually adapt to become superbugs, let's look at the mechanisms of AMR at the cellular level. So first is the inhibition of drug intake, or rather drug uptake. So there is the modification of the protein structures that make up the cell wall of these microorganisms. So they will make it impermeable, or they will block the entry of these antimicrobials into the cells of these microorganisms. Another one is the inactivation of this antibiotics. So this is taken care of by the degrading enzymes. So they will render the antibiotic ineffective for the treatment. Also is the flux pump. So these are developed by these microorganisms to spew off or release the antimicrobial substances that has entered the cell. And there is also this mutation. So this is through alteration of the target sites that are being attacked by these antimicrobial agents. to destroy the cell. So if these target cells have mutated, the antimicrobial agents will no longer be able to attack or attach to these sites. And the bypass of pathway inhibited by the drug. So actually these cellular processes follow certain pathways to sustain their growth and proliferation. And these antimicrobials are actually purposely designed to help these processes. But in AMR, the microorganisms may modify this mechanism. So they go detour, they pass through another route so that they can no longer be arrested along the way by these antimicrobials. So these are only some of the known mechanisms in AMR, and I think there will be more. But I would like to stress out once again that this can happen because of repeated exposure of these microorganisms to these antimicrobials in sublethal concentration. So na-expose sila, pero hindi sila namamatay. And this time, we're going to focus on foodborne AMR. Foodborne AMR can arise at different stages of the food chain. So it can be in the primary production, it can be in the food processing, or even in the consumer household. So let us look at each stage. So for the primary production actually includes the farming of agricultural crops, poultry, livestock, and even aquaculture, fisheries. And usually for the crops, the common issue here is the pesticides, while for veterinary drugs, it is common issue for food-producing animals. So first is the indiscriminate misuse and overuse of antimicrobials in animal production. So these veterinary drugs can be administered directly to animals through injection. It can be in the water. It can be mixed with feed materials, so what they call it as medicated feed formulations. And it should be done under the supervision of trained veterinary professionals. So I would like to note that these veterinary drugs ay hindi talaga bawal, but it should be administered under supervision of trained professionals to ensure proper dosage and frequency of application. So these drugs are initially meant for treatment and prevention of diseases. But with the increasing demand for food supply, there's the pressure to intensify or to increase the volume of production. And later on, it was discovered that these antibiotics can be used as growth promoters. So this is where the indiscriminate use of these substances started. Another one is the release of non-metabolized antibiotics or the residues to the environment. So the proper use of antibiotics will not actually result to these unwanted residues. But with excessive use of antibiotics, portions of these administered drugs or their metabolites or minsan tinatawag na mga daughter substances yan, will contaminate the environment through human feces saka animal manure. And for the third is the contamination of crops from the environment. So these agricultural crops can be directly exposed by direct application of pesticides or indirect from the environment, such as soil and irrigation water that is contaminated by these unwanted substances. For the food processing industry, although it's not as straightforward as in the primary production because we have stringent food safety protocols, so we know that we have the HACCP and all. But the food processing industry can still contribute to the AMR through these growth. So first is the unhygienic practices and health conditions. So of course, unhygienic practices is pretty obvious as high risk from the point of view of food safety. But for the health conditions and medications taken by the food handlers as potential contributor on the spread of AMR, it may be one of the reasons that when a person is unwell, it is not advisable for that person to continue with his work, especially in food handling. So it is advisable for him or her to rest from work. Another one is the inappropriate application of biocides. So these cleaning implements like surfactants, disinfectants, and the like improper usage of these products can actually contribute to AMR. So it's important that we should follow the manufacturer's instructions in applying these products. Another one is ineffective access to the microbial population. So this can happen when sanitation protocols are not properly verified or it's not being strictly followed by the sanitation personnel. So this will allow survival of these microorganisms, which can result to AMR. And fourth is the insufficient processing or preservation methods. So this food processing can involve additives or preservatives and processes like the thermal and the non-thermal processes. This aim to prolong the shelf life of food products. And it is important that the effectiveness of these processes or these substances, these preservatives in killing or controlling the growth of target microorganisms should be verified. And specifically for those emerging technologies, kasi insufficient processes can still contribute to AMR. In the consumer households, so from the consumer's end, we still have potential contributors to AMR. So one is the improper use of antimicrobials or antibiotics. Another one, the unsafe method of preparation ng food. So, kunwari, hindi nahugasan ng maayos. So, nandun ay mga microorganisms. And, so what's the big deal sa pagkakaroon ng AMR na to? So, another one, yung poor sanitation and hygiene. So, with this, ano ba ang big deal sa AMR na to? Bakit natin ito dinidiscuss? So, first, we have to look at it from the point of view of food safety. So, first is the compromised food quality and safety. So, according to WHO, antimicrobial resistant bacteria can contribute to, can contaminate our food supply from farm to fork, such as through slaughtering and processing. And the fruits and vegetables can also be contaminated by such bacteria from the farm or even to the cross-contamination later on in the processing. Another one from a published journal, it said that the presence of antibiotic residues in cultured animal products could result in the development of bacterial resistance and toxicity to consumers that can lead to morbidity and or death. So actually, these sublethal concentrations may not kill the bacteria, and also it can contribute, it can have adverse effects to the health of those consumers. Another one, still on compromised food quality and safety. So this is another journal. It says that one key agenda is low to emerge is antimicrobial resistance in the food chain, which with consequences for food safety, food security, and significant implications in trade policy. And also let us look at the point of view of human health. So for human health, there is reduced efficacy of related antibiotics used in humans. So according to a published journal, it says that a post-antibiotic era in which common infections and minor injuries can kill, far from being an apocalyptic fantasy, it is indeed a very real possibility for the 21st century. Another one is the increased human healthcare and economic cost. So it is costly. It's FAO says that the health consequences and economic cost of AMR are respectively estimated at 10 million human fatalities a year and a 2 to 3.5% decrease in GDP that is global, amounting to $100 trillion by 2050. And there is also that increased morbidity and mortalities. So according once again to WHO, antimicrobial resistant infections in humans can cause longer illnesses, increased frequency of hospitalization, and treatment failures that can result in death. So worldwide, there are authorities that are taking action to combat this slowly emerging but threatening food safety concern. So here are some intergovernmental agencies that are the forefront of this battle against AMR. They call it as the One Health approach. So we have here the World Health Organization that is in charge for the human health. So they have published their list of critically important antimicrobials. For the Food and Agriculture Organization, they have also their various issuances on food safety of these products that are agricultural in origin. And they have updated issuances with regards to COVID-19 transmission by food. For the OIE or the World Animal Health Organization, they are in charge of these emerging and diseases in animal health, the outbreaks and the results of this disease surveillance from the different countries in the world. For the World Trade Organization, they are in charge of these trade policies, so like the sanitary and the phytosanitary guidelines, and the standard setting body for food safety that is recognized by internationally. It is the Codex Alimentarius Commission or the CAC. So in the Philippine setting, we have our own laws and regulations related to food safety. First is the RA 9711 or the Food and Drug Administration Act of 2009, which mandates the Food and Drug Administration to regulate and monitor establishments and products, including veterinary drugs. Another one is the DA-DOH Joint AO number 2013-0026. So it mandates FDA once again to register the veterinary drugs in pharmaceutical dosage forms except for those intended for feeds and licensed establishments for manufacture, distribution, importation, export, and sale of the above, and the Bureau of Animal Industry in charge for the veterinary drugs for animal use. Another law is I think this is the most popular among us, the RA 10611 or the Food Safety Act of 2013. It is an act to strengthen the food safety regulatory system in the country to protect consumer health and facilitate market access of local food and food products and for other purposes. So it mandates the food safety regulatory agencies within the DA to be responsible for the health of animals where food is derived and the effects of feeds and inputs on such animals. And of course, the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources is specifically mandated for products coming from the fisheries and the aquaculture sector. Another one is the DA Administrative Order number 14, series of 2006, the implementation of the National Veterinary Drug Residues Control Program, and the creation of the Interagency Committee, which is, I will discuss it later on. Another one is the DA Administrative Order number 24, series of 2009, the implementing guidelines on the National Veterinary Drug Residues Control Program in food, pursuant to AO number 14, series of 2006. So it lays down the framework on key roles and responsibilities of farm operators, regulatory agencies, and academe, and includes requirements on test methods, the regulatory actions, and penalties. We also have the Philippine National Standard or PNS BAPS number 48 on veterinary drug residues in food. So they have set the maximum residue limits or MRLs that is adopted directly from the Codex Alimentarius Commission, and this is developed by the Bureau of Agriculture and Fisheries Standards in coordination with the National Codex Organization, or this is the counterpart of the Codex Alimentarius in the Philippines. We also have the joint DOH and DA administrative orders issued on banning on the use of following substances in food animals. So we have here the dyes, the malachite green and gentian violet, the beta agonists, the ulakindox, carbadox, the nitrofurans, and the chloramphenicals, which are found to have adverse effects to human health, such as anemia or cancer, so they can be carcinogenics and mutagenics. So we also have this now, the Interagency Committee on Antimicrobial Resistance. So this is co-chaired by the Department of Health and the Department of Agriculture. So from the side of the Department of Agriculture, we have this National Meat Inspection Services, Bureau of Animal Industry, Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, the National Dairy Authority, the Philippine Carabao Center. And the members are the Department, DOST, the DILG, and the DTI. It's supported by the participation of the academe, the private sector, and the research institutes. And from the side of the DOH, we have the Food and Drug Administration, the Research Institute for Tropical Medicine, and the Sentinel Laboratories. And from the inputs of all of these institutions, they create the Antimicrobial Resistance Surveillance Program Annual Report. So these agencies have their regional offices all over the country, and all of these are contributing to the data that is prepared every year. And that is reported to this ICAMR, or the Interagency Committee on Antimicrobial Resistance. So for a greater appreciation of the significance of the food industry, let us look at its status in the Philippine setting. So we have this agricultural sector, which contributes to 9% of the country's GDP, and 29%, so more than 1/4 of the labor force come from this sector. So we can see here in this pie chart that crops is still the most commonly produced agricultural product in the Philippines. And from the crops, we have the palay. Of course, we are rice eating, corn and banana, and also coconut. For the livestock, we can see here a very large percentage come from the swine industry and followed by the cattle industry. For the poultry and the fisheries, so for the fisheries, a large part, so more than 1/3 comes from aquaculture and others from commercial and municipal fisheries. For the poultry, another, we can see the very large portion from the chicken and chicken egg industry. So let's also look at what is for the food manufacturing. So of course, from primary production, we go to the secondary production, which is the manufacturing. So for the contributions in the industry value by Philippine food manufacturing, we can see here that most of the food manufacturing industries process food that is agricultural in origin. So we have here fruits, grains, animal feeds, meat, and seafood, and dairy. And for the distribution of manufacturing establishments in the Philippines, it's 48%. So almost half of it are food and beverage industry. So sa total ng lahat ng industry sa Pilipinas, almost half are from the food industry. So ganun kalaki ang industry natin sa pagkain. So we can see from this data na most ng mga production inputs really require human intervention. So lalo sa intensive farming, makikita natin na talagang yung inputs na yun pwedeng included doon yung mga antimicrobials. And makikita din natin na talagang napaka-importante ang food and beverage industry sa Pilipinas. So, for this global concern, it is not just a burden actually of the government and the food regulatory agencies. We can still, as people from the food industry, we can help in slowing down AMR in our part. So first of these recommended recommended guidelines is for the slowing down or the food industry is the best management practices that should be adhered to with respect to the use of material from human or animal in origin. So para ito primary food production environment. Kasi unwanted residues of veterinary drugs and other substances can reach the food that we eat through different routes. So pwedeng through the animal manure galing dun sa livestock na treated with these drugs na inappropriately or inappropriate disposal ng waste which could contaminate the soil and the water. Another one is the integrated pest management, which usually starts with the culture or farming practices. So dapat sa culture practices pa lang nag-implement na ng control measures to prevent infestation or disease occurrences. Pero kung hindi talaga maiwasan, syempre coupled by monitoring for sustainability of these practices. Pero may times na hindi talaga maiwasan yung mga undesirable occurrences, we can use antimicrobials. But then, once again, I would like to stress out that this should be properly applied. Another one is the good husbandry practices. So improve methods for infection, prevention, and control, such as husbandry, biosecurity, diagnostics, vaccines, and other alternatives that should be employed to reduce the need for antimicrobial use. So these good husbandry practices include all measures adopted by a farm from rearing of healthy animals, yung welfare nila, hanggang final slaughter or harvest. And these biosecurity measures also aim to prevent the introduction or spread ng harmful organisms. So this is to minimize the risk of transmission of these diseases. So this will include limiting the entry of visitors, pwedeng quarantining of newly procured animals, preventing entry of possible vectors or carriers of disease sa farm premises. So kahit yung mga wild animals, pwedeng may mga control measures para ma-prevent ang entry ng mga animals na to. And for the development of vaccines, this is one of the remedies that is being explored to prevent the use of antimicrobials in animal production. Another one is the use of biocides. So cleaning and disinfection protocols and processing regimes should be carefully designed, such as biocides to be used in accordance to manufacturers' recommendations. So we have an example here. The proper use of biocides. First of all, we have to read or follow the directions and look for precautionary statements. And then we have to pre-clean the surface. So kapag soiled yung surface kasi, mas hindi nagiging effective yung treatment. So wash the surface from grime before the disinfection. So follow the contact time. So kung anong recommended ng manufacturer na contact time ng disinfectant or ng biocide na ina-apply. And of course, we have to use either gloves or any PPE para sa ating safety. And pagkatapos gumamit ng mga ganitong substances, of course, we have to wash our hands properly. So ito isang example ng clean protocol. Another one is we have to remember the 4 steps to safe food handling. So there is cleaning well, avoiding cross-contamination, cooking the food thoroughly, and chilling correctly. And of course, ito ang pinakamaganda siguro, the continuous global and local research on novel antimicrobials from native resources for food and biomedical applications. So these resources can be from higher plants, marine and terrestrial algae, pwedeng fungi that are being scouted as potential sources of alternative food ingredients and sustainable alternate natural complementary therapies. So pwede sa seaweeds or mga marine algae, pwede yung mga antimicrobial packaging, yung mga medicinal plants, and even this is relatively new, yung mga marine antimicrobial peptides. So for our conclusion, antimicrobial resistance in the food chain is a slowly emerging global concern with great impact on food safety, food security, and human health, at may significant implications in local and international trade policies. And everyone can contribute either in the spread kapag wala kang ginawa or slowing down of foodborne AMR kapag ikaw ay naging maingat or kapag pina-follow mo yung kung anong dapat na safety protocols. And with this, I have to acknowledge these people, Ms. Nadya Patricia Sauza and Mr. Alvin James Gonzales, for their valuable contributions in the overall content of this presentation, Maria Divina Alcazabas for her suggestions in improving the contents, the Philippine Women's University Manila for supporting the conduct of this webinar series, and the Almighty God, the source of all wisdom. So here are my references, the photo credits, and thank you very much. Ms. Nadya.
Ayan. Thank you, Ms. Joy, for that very informative presentation. It was enlightening for me that AMR is not only caused by human medication or unchecked use of drugs, but as you discussed, AMR is also a huge concern of the food industry, especially in the food safety. Ayan, moving forward, we will be having our question and answer session in a short while. So to our dear audience, please leave your questions in the comment box. Going back to our pulse survey, as discussed by Ms. Joy, we now know that the correct answer is that AMR means antimicrobial resistance. Nakuha niyo po ba? Sana po. Ayan. So, time for our 15-minute Q&A session. Ms. Joy, are you ready? So to our audience, to our viewers, you can still enter your question in the comment box. We already have a few questions on hand. Ayan. For our first question, what is the most common antibiotic residue analysis we use in the Philippine food industry? Again, Ms. Joy, what is the most common antibiotic residue analysis we use in the Philippine food industry?
Thank you, ma'am, for that question. Does it mean that the method of analysis or the substance?
I think so.
So for the method of analysis, for the screening methods, most of the regulatory agencies use the enzyme-linked immunosorbent assay, or this is the immunoassays for the screening. But this can also give you semi-quantitative results. There's that color and there is that value that you can get. But for the confirmatory test, we use the liquid chromatography tandem mass spectrometry. I hope I have answered the question.
Ayan po. So that was immunoassay and yung mga spectro po yun, di ba? Ayan. So for our next chromatographic method and immunoassays. Okay. So we are moving to our next question po. Thank you, Ms. Joy. For our next question po, we have from Marco Dumalag Aguha. Do our HACCP practices help in the spread or increase in the rate of AMR? Or how is HACCP restricted in the spread or increase of AMR? Again po, do our HACCP practices help in the spread or increase in the rate of AMR, ma'am?
Actually, HACCP practices, if properly implemented, can help in slowing down the spread of AMR in the food processing industry. And for the second question, ma'am, sorry.
How is HACCP restricted in the spread or increase of AMR?
For the normal HACCP plants, sometimes one thing that is overlooked is the raw materials that come from agriculture in origin. So sometimes we tend to overlook the pesticides and the veterinary drug residues in these products that are agricultural in origin. So I think this is one area where the HACCP practices could be improved.
Okay, so in actually HACCP helps, di ba po ba, in reducing the AMR po. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So our next question po from Safiro Tez Texon. What's the most common microbes present in meat products? Again, what's the most common microbes present in meat products? Ayan po, Miss Joy.
It depends, ma'am, kung di ba pag matagal ng storage, it depends sa mga factors surrounding those meat products. So pwedeng kung yung sa unhygienic na, yung factors galing sa unhygienic na slaughter, ibang pwedeng tayo doon ng mga E. coli. But when yung long-term storage naman, pwede tayong doon ng mga listeria. So it depends po sa circumstances surrounding these meat products.
Okay. Ayan, so iba-iba po, walang specific bacteria tayo or microorganisms sa meat products. Di ba po ba, Ma'am Joy?
It all depends actually, ma'am. It all depends talaga, ma'am, doon sa practices. Kasi kaya malaking bagay yung practice. Kasi pwedeng hindi siya inherent or pwedeng inherent doon sa product. Pero pwedeng makontrol with practices. So, gaya ng sinabi ko kanina, gaya ng mga nabanggit ko for some of my slides, malaking bagay ang nagagawa ng tamang practices. Kasi kahit gaano kaganda yung produkto, kung yung handling, yung practices ng rearing ng animal, yung production, especially sa primary production, pag hindi maayos, doon buong food chain. So, makakarating hanggang doon sa level ng mga consumers or yung mga kakain, makakarating doon kasi itong mga unwanted residues na ito, they cannot be removed by cooking. So, yun yung nakakatakot. Kaya
so, good agricultural practices and good manufacturing practices talaga.
Na yung malaki ang part ng primary
Ma'am Joy,
malaki ang part ng mga practices sa mga bawat stage ng production. Kaya isa natin kanina.
Okay po. We have another question from Alain Anyosa. What do you think is the most proactive step in food safety in order to stop or reduce the biological hazards in highly used surfaces area? Again po, what do you think is the most proactive step in food safety in order to stop or reduce the biological hazards in highly used surfaces area? Ma'am Joy?
Ayan. Thank you, ma'am. Actually, ang mga microorganisms po, hindi
Yes
talaga
po.
natin matatanggal sa environment yan. Kasi talagang inherent.
Yes po.
Hello? Hello, ma'am?
Yes po. Loud and clear po.
Ma'am, can you hear me, ma'am, Nadya? These microorganisms, hindi talaga natin hindi talaga natin matatanggal sa environment. Kasi nandiyan na sila. They coexist with us. Pero itong mga microorganisms na to, especially dun sa mga food processing industries, siguro, I think itong mga normal protocols na pina-follow natin with HACCP, with yung mga sanitation practices, I think kapag tamang pagka-implement, kapag finallow strictly yung protocols, na-verify yung protocols bago implement ng full-blown implementation, I think these are already sufficient para may slow down ang pag-spread ng mga foodborne antimicrobial resistance. Kasi ang magiging depekto lang naman nun kapag hindi tama ang pagkagawa. Kapag nag-shortcut, kasi minsan may mga personnel na para mapabilis yung trabaho, nag-shortcut, hindi nila alam, hindi napapatay si mikrobyo, and nabubuhay yun. At kapag nabuhay yun, nagde-develop ng resistance, superbugs na sila ngayon. Hindi na sila mapapatay basta-basta. So yun na po, yung antimicrobial resistance.
Okay. It's a very big deal po na sumunod tayo sa mga cleaning protocols po natin. Tama po ba yun, Ma'am Joy?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So for our last question, for this question and answer portion, we have from Avery Manaloto. What's the best available cleaning agent that we can buy at the supermarket if I am just a home entrepreneur? This is to clean my veggies and meat. Again, what's the best available cleaning agent that we can buy at the supermarket if I am just a home entrepreneur? This is to clean my veggies and meat. Ano po, Ma'am Joy?
Actually, ma'am, ang cleaning is usually, lalo yan sa mga agricultural produce, hindi na natin ibabad sa kung ano pang mga chemicals na pambabad kasi magdadagdag ka lang po ng contamination. I think potable water would be enough and dapat clean thoroughly at saka isa pa para mamatay yung mga microorganisms na hindi dapat nandun sa pagkain mo is dapat i-follow natin yung binanggit ko kanina na 4 steps. So you have to clean thoroughly nga, gaya ng nabanggit ko. You avoid cross-contamination ng raw and cook na pagkain. You have to cook. Dapat yung cooking niya maayos din, hindi especially kapag meat, dapat hindi half-cook. And yung chill, tamang chilling din or freezing kung kailangan i-freeze. So it still
Yung correct temperature po.
Practices. So practices pa rin siya. Hindi natin kailangan maglagay ng mga kung ano-anong chemical dahil lalong magiging masama yung quality ng ating pagkain na kinakain.
Okay po. Ayan. Thank you, Miss Joy, for that insightful Q&A session. Marami po tayong nasagot, no? And I hope that our speaker was able to answer our viewers' questions. For those questions we were not able to answer, please do not hesitate to send in your questions to our email flashed on the screen. That is pwfoodtrends2020@gmail.com. Again, you can send in your questions at pwfoodtrends2020@gmail.com. Miss Joy and our team will be happy to respond to your questions. Ayan, thank you, Miss Joy. We move on to a very exciting part of our webinar. It is surprise. We have giveaways. So good news to our active participants who typed in their questions. We have selected the first two participants, viewers who commented as the lucky people who will win 200 peso credit via GCash each. Again, we have selected the first two participants. Ayan. And our winners for this giveaways are June Vincent Blas and Marco Dumalag Aguha. Again po, that is June Vincent Blas and Marco Dumalag Aguha. Congratulations po sa inyo. Our team will be contacting you via Facebook for your prize. So please, abang-abang po tayo niyan. Quick reminder for those interested to receive an e-certificate, please complete our webinar evaluation form through the link that we will post after the webinar. Okay, what's next po, Miss Innah?
So thank you, Miss Nadya and Miss Joy. So how are you guys? I hope you're still fine. So we are now down to our second part of this session. But before we start the talk, we are inviting everyone to join in our second quick poll question. So to join in, please access the website posted on the screen, menti.com, and key in the digit code 4639721. Or rather, you may scan the QR code also flashed on your screen. So we're going to our poll question number 2 for our second topic for today's webinar. So our question is, what does FSRA stand for? You have 1 minute to key in your answer. So our choices are Financial Services Regulatory Authority, Food Safety Regulatory Agency, or is it Food Safety Regulatory Associate? So again, in order to participate, please go to menti.com, that is menti.com, and key in the code 4639721. So the question is, what does FSRA stand for? So looks like there are many participants already keying their answer. So we only have 15 seconds remaining on the clock. So again, please access menti.com and key in the code 4639721. So we have 5 seconds left and time's up. So our poll is officially closed. So it looks like that 76% of our viewers choose Food Safety Regulatory Agency. So later on, we're going to reveal the answer after our second speaker's talk. So going back for our second speaker, she is a food technologist from Polytechnic University of the Philippines, Manila, with a 1-year MBA course at Negros Occidental, Recoletos. Currently, she is taking her degree in Master in Food Safety Management at Philippine Women's University. She is also the Business Development Head and Regulatory Officer of Herbanext Incorporated, a local herbal manufacturer of natural-based nutraceuticals with projects tied up with DOST Tuklas Lunas program. Furthermore, she is also a member consultant of Negrosanon Consultancy Group, which provides food safety consultation services to her fellow Negrosanon. Without further ado, please welcome Ms. Camille O. Ayuro as she talks about consumer awareness, food safety, and delivery of fresh produce purchased online. Hi, Ms. Camille.
Hi, Miss Innah. Good morning. Thank you for that very warm welcome. And good day, everyone. So I will be your speaker on the topic Consumer Awareness, Food Safety on Delivery of Fresh Produce Ordered Online. I hope you will join me till the end of this session. So let's go for the topic outline. We will be discussing about food safety, food contaminants, food supply chain pre-pandemic, the effects of COVID-19 in the food supply chain, the global consequences of COVID-19 in the food chain, the government initiatives, the trend of online palengke, fresh produce, what's the latest from our Department of Agriculture, the raw and fresh meat from NMIS, which has guidelines based from NMIS, the consumer food safety on seafood products, and latest from Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources. So moving forward, what is food safety? So food safety as defined by Food Safety Act of 2013 is the assurance that food will not cause harm to the consumer. So when we say food safety, it should be applied anytime and anywhere. And food safety also refers to the handling, preparing, and storing food in a way to best reduce the risk of individuals from foodborne illnesses. So food safety is a global concern that covers a variety of different areas of everyday life. And let us have a refresher about the food contaminants. The first food contaminant is biological contamination. So it occurs when food becomes contaminated by living organisms or the substance they produce. So this also includes biological matter produced by humans, rodents, insects, and microorganisms. This type of contamination is the main culprit. Foodborne illnesses and food poisoning occurs in the society. So this contaminant also is the common cause of food waste and food spoilage because of the food microorganisms. So the 6 types of microorganisms that cause these foodborne illnesses are bacteria, viruses, parasites, protozoa, fungi, and prions. For the next and second type of contaminant is the chemical contamination. So it occurs when food comes in contact with or produces toxic chemicals which can lead to chemical food poisoning. So meron pong 2 categories ang chemical contamination. It's either natural or artificial. So for the natural contaminant, it occurs naturally on living organisms. So example for this category is the solanine in potato. So yung potato meron siyang pesticidal property which protects it from certain pests. And it can not be toxic sa potato, but it can be toxic when we consume them. And the second category is the artificial, which can be from insecticides, pesticides, and cross-contamination also of other harmful chemicals. So good agricultural practices must be observed also to avoid chemical contamination. For the third type of contaminant is the physical contamination. So it's the most common sa tatlo. So it occurs when a physical object enters food at some stage of the production or preparation process. So the most popular physical contaminant is the human hair. So, di ba, kahit sa household may mga nag-fall off, hindi naman sobrang dami, mga 1 piece ng hair, ganon. So this can be easily seen by the naked eye. But there are also physical contaminants that can cause choking hazards and laceration when ingested. And these contaminants are, examples po, are shreds of wood, metal, and glass. But according to US FDA, 6 mm is the tolerable size for ferrous and non-ferrous metal fragments. And on the next slide, so just a quick discussion on COVID-19. So everybody is in stage of panic because of the pandemic caused by this novel coronavirus. And But according to the World Health Organization, there are no evidences that COVID-19 can cause foodborne illnesses or can be transmittable through food, since this is spread by air droplets. And this will be further discussed by my colleagues on the next session. And I hope you'll be able to attend so that you can have more knowledge and they will explain it further. What's the real status during this pandemic in the food service industry? And moving forward, so these are the food safety regulatory agencies in the Philippines. First is the Department of Agriculture. So they focus on fresh produce for agricultural sector. So some of the agencies under the Department of Agriculture are National Meat Inspection Services and the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources. Second is the Department of Health. So the agency connected with DOH is the Food and Drug Administration, which handles the food safety monitoring of prepackaged food products. They are also in charge for product registration and inspection of food manufacturing industries. And the third is our corresponding local government units. But in this talk, we will discuss initiatives regulated by the Department of Agriculture. So on the next slide, what are the effects of COVID-19 in the supply chain? So on this slide, we have the normal flow of the food supply chain. So first, our farmers will harvest the products and forward it to the warehouse for storage. And then the warehouse will distribute it to the manufacturing company. And this manufacturing company will make products and the output will be distributed to distribution chains that will be responsible in distributing the products in the retail or supermarket. And the retail and supermarket will be in charge of selling this to the consumer. So on the next slide, these are the effects of COVID-19 in the food supply chain. For the first picture, so as you seen in the pic, wala na masyadong choices sa shelf. So because people are hoarding both essential and non-essential goods. So all of us experience this naman, di ba? Wala na tayong nagkaubusan ng mga canned goods, ng noodles, ng mga instant food products kasi nga nagpanic. And then implementation of food pass. So if food sellers don't have food pass, they will not be able to transport and sell their goods to neighboring cities kasi merong strict border controls. And the third peak, since there are limited flow of transportation, there's an oversupply of fruits and vegetables. Example is yung case sa Baguio, nagkaroon ng oversupply ng vegetables. So nasira lang yung na-harvest, na sayang ito, and it caused a big impact sa income ng ating local farmers. So these are some of the local negative effects of COVID-19 in the food chain. On the next slide, the global consequences of COVID-19 in the food chain. First is the strained transportation of food and other goods across the country. So because of the restricted movement, may border control, so we have experienced a minimal to no available supply due to the blockages of borders from certain countries. And on the second picture, those in color red are the countries that have imposed temporary export restrictions on products due to COVID-19. Because meron din before na ibang mindset na it might be transferred yung COVID sa products and it might stick dun sa item. So, nagkaroon sila ng temporary closure and restrictions in exporting. And then, delays in barge services, which resulted to extended storage because there are certain and some seaports na affected. They required, hindi naman some, so almost all in the world kasi we use sea as mode of transportation ng goods, especially if they are in bulk and they are cheaper. So some ports around the world required a 14-day quarantine before entering and unloading of goods, and also delays due to long lines before entering the port that affects the shelf life of the products. Hence, this might cause also near expiry days when distributed to the local market. And lastly, the temporary glut or trigger upstream on the production and production cuts in the food service industry, and urban supply and demand for fresh produce are both in decline. So the effect in the global food service industries, nagkaroon ng closures and the sources of raw materials are greatly affected. Then oversupply of these fresh goods since closed, and there are limited operations in the food service. And for the food service industry, this will be further discussed by my colleagues on the second session, and we hope to see you there again. However, meron namang nabigay na positive effects COVID-19 in food supply chain. First is the rise of e-commerce site. So because of this rise in platform, the demand also for the delivery services increase. But these platforms already existed before, but their demand significantly increases during this pandemic because almost everyone do not want to go out, and they want to purchase everything at the convenience of their home due to ayaw nilang magkaroon din ng COVID-19. So the increase for these services significantly rise. And now we will go to the government initiatives. For the first government initiative will be under the Department of Agriculture. So the Department of Agriculture simplifies rules to ensure delivery of foods, agri-products, and inputs. So these are usually in the urban sector, so that are greatly affected when it comes to food source because they need to buy everything outside like fresh produce. But then the Department of Agriculture ensure that the distribution or movement of these agricultural products, food and agri-fishery products are unhampered within Metro Manila and its neighboring communities. And also, the Department of Agriculture developed a new program to assist the farmers and fisher folks, cooperatives, and associations. So this new program developed by Department of Agriculture is the Enhanced Kadiwa Program, which aims to provide additional capital for the farmers and fishermen cooperatives. And these are the modifications under the Kadiwa program. So we have the Kadiwa ni Ani at Kita, Kadiwa on Wheels, and online services ni Kadiwa, and also door-to-door delivery. So yung picture po dyan sa right is an example of the Kadiwa on Wheels in Zamboanga City. And then the trend also of the online grocery. So they already exist before the pandemic, usually in the highly urbanized cities, example in Metro Manila. So these are, example are Pushcart, PH, Honest B, Walter Mart, and Fresh Produce, PH. And then nagkaroon din ng boom ng groceries na ito sa ibang cities. And also the trend of online palengke. So the rise of online palengke existed during this pandemic in some urban areas also. So due to the busy urban life before, meron na rin ito, but the demand now rapidly increased. So same with online groceries din sila. So let us be reminded on the consumer food safety of fresh fruits and vegetables. So for the food safety of the consumers, so first is know your source. So let's always buy from a reputable supplier and check if they have their own delivery or if they have third-party delivery service such as Grab, Angkas. So in Negros po, in Bacolod, we have here Maxim and Made in Bacolod. We also have Grab Pasabay. So know if they have their own delivery service and how they will transport it, and if this source is trustworthy. Then next is inspect fruits and vegetables upon arrival to your doorstep. So check if there are bruises or damage or baka lanta na siya. Just return na lang the items if you don't want the quality you will receive. And then always wash your hands. So it's a daily reminder to always wash our hands before doing anything. So before and after handling food products and touching ng mga dirty na bagay, let's always wash our hands. And the next is always wash fruits and vegetables. So clean thoroughly before storing in the refrigerator or before consuming fruits and vegetables na raw. On the next slide, and so I'll be sharing a simple process flow of receiving fresh herbs in a manufacturing setup. So since agricultural din naman siya na product. So the first is so this is the setup po namin in our company at Herbanext Incorporated here in Bago City, Negros Occidental. So first is the harvesting of fresh herbs at the farm. And then after harvesting, the receiving of fresh harvest. So iba po yung receiving area in the farm area and the manufacturing setup. And after receiving the harvest, there is a cleaning and sorting of the herbs. After cleaning and sorting, there's washing of the herbs. And then after washing, we will forward it now to our manufacturing plant for receiving, quality control, material checking at our manufacturing plant. So these are our practices within our premises in compliance with GMP. So next is the latest. From agricultural, we will jump to the meat sector. So what's the latest from National Meat Inspection Services? So the NMIS set guidelines on online selling and house delivery of meat. So first, for online sellers, they must be DTI registered and have LGU business permit. So ensure po natin before we buy online that they have a valid business permit. And then online seller must be knowledgeable and implement the specific requirement of food laws. And must be sourced also from NMIS licensed meat establishment or LGU registered meat for the local sellers of these meat products. The next slide, if we are to purchase imported meat, they should be DA accredited country and or DA accredited foreign meat establishment and DA accredited cold storage warehouse. Second, and for local suppliers, meat shall come from an NMIS licensed meat establishment. And on the third picture, the transport and handling of meat shall follow the guidelines. So this guideline was already implemented even before the pandemic. So for the guidelines of meat handling under DA Administrative Order number 5, series of 2012. So Section 5, vehicles and crates to be used in meat transport should be kept clean and regularly disinfected. Transport vehicle should be closed and or have provisions for covering and protecting meat. And the product compartment of transport vehicle should not contain items other than the meat product. So when it's for meat lang, it should be for meat to avoid cross-contamination. On Section 6, persons and entities engaged in the handling and sale of meat in meat markets shall be accredited by NMIS or registered by LGU. So always look for the NMIS stamp or their local government unit registration. And meat shall be hygienically handled all throughout distribution and sale. So areas where the meat is handled and sold shall always be maintained in sanitary condition and in good repair. And meat showing signs of spoilage shall be immediately removed from the sale area and shall be properly disposed. So this must not be sold to the market. On the next slide, section 7. So children shall not be frozen and shall be maintained at a minimum product temperature higher than 0 degrees Celsius and a maximum of 10 degrees Celsius. So frozen meat should be maintained at a maximum product temperature of 0 degrees Celsius and should be stored in a meat cold storage at less than negative 18 degrees Celsius. And then thawed meat should be maintained at a maximum product temperature of 5 degrees Celsius. And then now, let's go on the consumer food safety on meat. So same with the food safety of online purchase of fresh fruits and vegetables. Review the shop policy. So buy from a reputable supplier and also read other customers' review kung mas marami ba yung positive review kaysa sa negative reviews in order for you to help on your buying decision. And then also ask if the seller, if they have delivery time and schedules. So next is use contactless payment if possible to avoid then cross-contamination with the delivery guy or maiwasan yung cross-contamination then from handling food product and yung money if you will pay cash. Then, on the next slide, for meat bought online na in packaging that are packed already. So, double check the labels of raw meats and then wash hands after receiving deliveries purchased online. Also, inspect the meat before consuming. So, inspect on the next slide, please. So, consider also the physical properties of meat if may green ba siya or baka mamaya mabaho na yung meat. So, before accepting them, kahit in-order mo siya online, you have the capability or the power to reject it if you don't like it and if it does not pass the standards for a good meat quality. And then always contact your customer service or seller if you have any questions or concerns. So on the next slide, so the NMIS issued a reminder on buying fresh meat. So this buying fresh meat 101 is for the safety of all the consumers or ang mga mamimili. So always wear face mask and then if we are to buy meat outside, observe social distancing. Next, please. And hanapin ang meat inspection certificate. So, buy from a reputable supplier, buy meat with NMIS stamp. Suriin ang kalidad ng karne. So, always check meat in physical appearance and also yung odor niya. And then, maghugas ng kamay at mag-sanitize. So, wash your hands and then apply alcohol as necessary. And then, tumawag sa NMIS kung may mga katanungan. So, for more info, you may visit NMIS Facebook page or you can shoot an email at nmis@nmis.gov.ph. Moving forward, we will now go to what's latest from the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources. So, the Department of Agriculture, Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources launched integrated fish and vegetable farming called the Project Urban Aquaponics. So this project is for the sustainability of food in the urban communities. And then the Department of Agriculture also offered quality affordable fish via Isda on the Go and Seafood Kadiwa. So kung meron po kaninang kadiwa ni Ani and Tita, meron din po for the seafood sector. So that this program is to bring also quality and affordable fish and fishery products to residents in Metro Manila and other urban areas in the country amid the community quarantine due to COVID-19 pandemic. On the next slide. So these are some of the fisheries administrative orders. So these orders already existed, and for everybody's awareness, they existed already even before the pandemic. So we have guidelines on the production and harvesting, handling, and transportation of shellfish for implementation of the local government, the FAO number 209 series of 2001, and FAO number 227 series of 2008, the rules and regulations governing the export of fish and aquatic products to European member countries. FAO number 135 series of 1981, rules and regulations governing importation of fish and fishery aquatic products. On the next slide, the fisheries administrative orders also have FAO number 192 series of 1997, so establishing the fisheries quarantine services in the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources in the Department of Agriculture regional field units, and prescribing rules, regulations, and procedures thereof. Also, BFAR AC number 251 series of 2014, the traceability system for fish and fishery products. Lastly, FAO number 259 series of 2018, the rules and regulations on the importation of frozen fish and fishery aquatic products for wet markets during close and off fishing seasons or during the occurrence of calamities. So these are some of the issued fisheries administrative orders. For more details, you may opt to visit the website of Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources. Now let's move on to the food safety of seafood products purchased online. First, same with fruits, vegetables, and meat, let's always purchase seafood kasi perishable din sila from a dealer that maintains high quality standards. So always check for a reputable supplier. And then purchase seafood carefully. Then also use contactless payment if possible. It is highly recommended to use contactless payment rather than cash. On the next slide. Always wash your hands. So before and after handling or receiving the seafood product. And also inspect delivery vehicle and personnel for cleanliness. So importante din po yung food hygiene nung magdi-deliver aside because it also affects food safety. And then seafoods delivered must be well packed and cold to the touch. So dapat hindi siya yung parang room temp yung temperature niya and does not have a strong fishy smell. And lastly, for frozen fish, so store immediately in the freezer, and for shellfish should be put in a shallow pan if you will not consume it immediately, no water, covered with moistened paper towel and refrigerated if you will not consume it the day itself. And then for mussels and clams, this should be used within 2 to 3 days and oysters within 7 to 10 days. But live lobsters and crabs should be cooked the day they are purchased. So these are guidelines for consumer food safety on purchase of seafood products. So this food safety for the consumers already existed and must be applicable even before the pandemic. We would just want to reiterate it again during this pandemic so that we will be reminded of food safety during this hard time. So on the next slide, the Bureau of Agriculture and Fisheries standards release a reminder or guide for the consumer. So they issue a reminder or gabay para sa ligtas na produktong agricultural sa panahon ng COVID-19 para po sa mga mamimili. So it is highly recommended to always wash our hands. So for this one, always wash our hands. So maghugas ng kamay gamit ang sabon. So you will need to count 20 seconds or yung happy birthday song twice. And then hugasan ng maayos ang mga gulay at prutas. So as if you were able to attend yung topic po ni Ma'am Joy regarding antimicrobial resistance, so potable water is already acceptable in cleaning fruits and vegetables. Then iniwasan ang mga pagkain ng mga hilaw na pagkain nagmula sa hayop kasi they might also produce or cause foodborne illnesses if not cooked well. And then, so linisin ng mabuti ang mga kasangkapan. This is also a concern so that we will avoid cross-contamination. On the next slide, so the Bureau of Agriculture and Fisheries Standards also set a reminder para naman po sa retail food premises. So observe social distancing and avoid overcrowding. Implement queue management strategies. So designate separate entrance and exit. So ang entrance and exit should be not on the same way. Dapat sila may designated areas. And then promote prepackaged options. And highly recommended ang promote online contactless payment. And then place signages that need to be observed. So for the conclusion of this topic, so these consumer food safety guidelines have been implemented even before the time of pandemic COVID-19. And there are also government-issued regulations that have been established even before COVID-19 pandemic started. And these guidelines should be monitored, regulated, and applied every time to avoid food safety issues such as foodborne disease, food waste, and food poisoning. And then for my acknowledgement. So first of all, I would like to thank the good Lord for giving me wisdom and courage to present in this webinar. To my group mates, Miss Nadya, Sauza, Miss Innah Fajardo, Miss Joy Azarias, and Mr. Alvin Gonzales, my sincere gratitude for making time and effort during our late night meetings to make this session a success. To our professors, Ma'am Rosalinda Lorilla and Ma'am Divina Alcazabas for their inputs and added knowledge, and to my fellow food safety classmates for their utmost support and hard work to make this whole event successful. Lastly, to my company, Herbanext Incorporated, our company president, Mr. Philip Cruz, and to my fellow colleagues for their unending support and being one of my strong support system. So that's it for today. I want you to also look on my references if I miss something, and if you want to dig deeper, you can visit these useful sites and links. And thank you all for being with us during this session 1, and God bless.
All right. So thank you, Miss Camille, for that very informative presentation. So as we listened to Miss Camille, we know that online purchasing is very popular nowadays, especially this quarantine period. So everything pwede na siya mabili online through different apps. And there are some suppliers who are now also catering online buying of foods. So in spite of those conveniences, we still have to look at the safety protocols that are existed, and meron din na mga bagong ni-release yung government in order to keep our food safe. So thank you again, Miss Camille. So before we jump to the next part of our Q&A session, reminder, you can now submit your questions through the comment box section. So back to our poll question. What does FSRA stand for? So we heard from Ms. Camille that the answer is Food Safety Regulatory Agency. So I hope you were able to get the correct answer right. So now time for our 15-minute Q&A session. So if you have questions, again, you can type them in at the comment box section and Miss Camille will happy to answer them. So ready ka na ba, Miss Camille?
Yes po, Miss Aina.
So for our first question from Mr. Carlos James, does the herb and spices can help us to prolong the shelf life of meats if we don't have refrigerator? And what are those herbs and spices?
Um, for that question, for the herbs and spices, it depends pa rin po kasi sa methods na gagamitin and ingredients. I can't say exactly if herbs and spices can really help kasi 'di ba ang pinaka most effective method of preservation is yung salt nga po. And the best pa rin sa meat is refrigeration. So for the herbs and spices, I think we need to review it more if they can really help in preservation of meat without refrigeration. Kasi yung
Okay.
herbs din, ano sila ng, di ba makonsider din naman sila na raw material. And
Yes.
baka we need also to know yung source natin ng herbs and spices if okay sila kasi baka mamaya magkaroon ng, instead na ma-preserve mo, nagkaroon ka pa ng cross-contamination.
Okay. So thank you, Miss Camille. So para ma-preserve yung meat, it's better to follow pa rin yung refrigeration and yung salt as a preservation, parang i-cure mo siya with the salt, no? So going to our second question. So wait, so we have lined up so many questions. Check. So wait lang po. We're waiting for the second question. Ako pala, Miss Camille, so may question ako. So, yun po bang mga safety protocols kailangan lang i-apply natin ngayong pandemic or no?
As mentioned po during the talk, those protocols po ng consumer food safety, applicable po siya even walang pandemic. So, it should be applied in our everyday lives. Kasi tayong mga Pinoy, hindi tayo ganun ka-strict when it comes to food safety. In reality, we always have this mindset na matibay naman yung sikmura niyan, so okay lang. But we must need to apply food safety whether there is pandemic or there's no pandemic. Ayun po. I hope I answered your question, Miss Aina.
Oo nga, so matibay ang sikmura natin, no, ma'am?
Opo.
So, eto, meron tayong second question from Joni Jean Bernales. So, what is the limit time for the meat to be in thawed condition or temperature?
Toad, yung so,
Okay, ma'am.
sa household, if I remember, much better if you tow it from freezer to the refrigerator for maximum of 12 hours. So, ayun po. So, sa bahay lang to ha, kasi syempre iba naman po yung guidelines when it comes to serve safe. But I think the safest, if you will tow your meat from frozen temperature, you can have at the maximum of 12 hours sa refrigerated temperature. Kasi mas pangit kung doon ka mag-tow naman sa sa room temperature kasi baka instead na it might also cause cross-contamination if you will tow your meat in the outside environment.
Yes. So, yung refrigeration towing is one way to tow meat.
Yun po yung pinaka-advisable po, yung refrigeration na towing instead sa towing sa outside na environment. So example, magluluto ka bukas ng pork chop. So yung frozen pork mo, ito muna siya the night before sa lower part ng refrigerator mo. Kasi at least gradual yung pag-slow down ng temperature, hindi yung masya-shock yung meat niya pag dilabas mo na siya sa outside, yung sa room temperature na environment.
Okay, thank you for that answer, Miss Camille. So next question is from Daryl Carlo Galang. What are the control measures set by the government to avoid oversupply of raw materials, especially in rural areas, without compromising its quality?
So for the rural areas, I know DA already set programs, no, regarding that. So we can connect with our local government units regarding the projects established in the rural areas, or if there are also initiatives from the other agency like the OST to avoid oversupply of these agricultural products. So for more details and more precise answers, I recommend to visit your local government units for this matter, since since Department of Agriculture already is very active in helping the farmers, and also they are very active in the programs to help nga po yung malesen yung oversupply ng agricultural products. Miss Aina? Yes po.
Ay, sorry, nakamute. So, yun, siguro we're down to our last question na. So, this is from Melvin Joel Sakmar. How safe is food we buy online? And what are the present measures being done by FSRA to ensure safety in buying foods online?
So, yung sa online food selling nga po, as discussed po a while ago, we better check nga yung supplier natin if legit siya or reputable supplier. So, yung FSRA, I know that they are also conducting inspections and online surveys regarding din, kasi nga they are also monitoring customer complaints, no? So, for the online selling, hindi natin sila kasi makokontrol mismo. It's not beyond our control, but the local government units and the FSRAs are always reminding the public to always check your supplier, and at the same time you may also to visit their Facebook page or website from time to time if they are partnered with Department of Agriculture with the Kadiwa program, kasi mas ma-ensure natin if they are partnered with them, mas safe and mas okay yung products na ibinebenta nila, and makakasiguro tayo talaga na ligtas yon at malinis na source po ng food products.
Okay, so Miss Camille, ang daming nagtatanong. So, meron pa tayong dalawang question. So, ito is from Avery Manaloto. How do we know if the frozen imported meat in the groceries are NMIS approved?
Well, I suggest you also visit their page and or their website, kasi meron naman sila doon ng ng section kung saan yung mga list ng registered na food na frozen products. So importante din na i-check natin yung mga government websites natin, kasi they are active naman in updating the people, the Philippine community for the recent events. So I recommend na visit also their page from time to time to be more informed and to be more aware of what's happening, no, sa ngayon po na situation. So you may visit their website po para malaman din natin kung ano ba yung mga latest na na news, and ano yung mga registered na meats na imported meat manufacturer, 'di ba? Kung sa FDA po nagpo-post din siya, 'di ba, ng mga pre-packaged na products. You might visit their website din for pre-package kung ano ba to, registered ba to, or at nagpo-post din sila na maging aware sa mga gantong product na hindi registered or hindi approved ni example ni NMIS or ni FDA.
Okay, so next question, Ms. Camille, is from Ms. Beth Daw. What is the immediate and urgent move taken by the government to address oversupply of fresh produce?
Yung sa parang hindi ba yan Miss Aina medyo same thought ng kanina nagtanong yung sa
Similar
oversupply?
yun po. Yes, ma'am. It's quite
Opo. So,
similar.
ayun po, let's ano po, si FCDA po meron po siyang na-establish po na programs to prevent na po yung oversupply po ng fresh produce by the Kadiwa program po. So, at the same time, dahil nga nagkaroon ng transport, nagkaroon ng hampering sa transport before, so to maiwasan iyon, nag-ano sila, minake sure ni DA na yung transportation ng fresh produce is unhampered and continuous, and yung issuance ng food pass is mabigay kaagad na hindi na maghihintay yung mga distributor. Kasi if they will wait, it will just cause food waste. So, ayun po yung mga initiatives ni DA to help also our local farmers.
Okay, so Miss Camille, we still have questions. Our viewers are very active in participating to this Q&A session. So from Abe Rose Barya, is it okay to store marinated fish in the fridge instead of the freezer? And how long yung shelf life niya?
Ma'am, yung sa marinated fish po, depende po kasi kung ano yung minarinade niya, no? So, pwede namang i-marinate mo siya muna tapos lagay mo din i-ref mo tapos i-freezer mo siya if you will not cook it on the same day. For the shelf life, it depends din po kasi sa isda na kasi depende po 'di ba, iba-iba naman po yung types ng fish. Merong iba na parang mabilis siya madurog. So, it depends on the fish and it depends also sa marinade na gagamitin mo po.
Okay, so we're down to the last question, Camille, from Nikki Wilfrod Elarma. Animals consume more food and resources than they produce. Can you discuss how these livestock greatly contribute to the global warming and the future of food? So, medyo it's about global warming, ma'am.
Opo, kasi sa ano po tayo, food safety po tayo, no, na we can answer your question. We will just shoot you an email regarding that po.
Okay, so looks like we already consumed our 15-minute Q&A time. Again, to Ms. Camille, thank you for answering our participants' question. So
Thank
for
you, Miss
those
Aina.
Yes, ma'am. For those questions we were not able to select and answer, please don't hesitate to send them to our email. It's flash on your screen. So at twufoodtrends2020@gmail.com. So rest assured we will answer those questions. Moving forward, so as a small token of our appreciation, we are giving away 200 peso GCash credit to two of our lucky viewers for today. So this is our thanks to you guys for participating and joining us in this first webinar series. So the winners were selected from those people who have submitted their questions. So we selected the first two persons who submitted their questions. So, again, the price is 200 peso GCash credit. And our winners are, we're waiting for the names of the winners. Saglit lang po. So, our winners are Sandali lang po. Um, so, our winners are, yung unang nag-send po ng question ay si Miss Saglit lang po. I'm going back. So, our first winner is Miss Joni Jean Ilaw Bernales. She submitted the first question. And the second winner is Daryl Carlo S. Galang. So, thank you for participating and congratulations to your prize. Our team will contact you via Facebook. So, watch out for it. So, Miss Nadj.
All right, Miss Aina. Thank you. Congratulations to our giveaway winners. Now, we would like to proceed in acknowledging the people who had given us their time, knowledge, and expertise for this seminar. We would like to request Dr. Emerita Zornosa, Director of Graduate Studies, to help us recognize them.
So, for our first speaker, Miss Joy A. Azarias. So, Dr. Zornosa, please do the honor.
Yeah, good morning to everyone. To express our sincere appreciation for sharing your expertise on AMR, we are presenting to you this certificate to Miss Joy Azarias. The PWU, Philippine Women's University Graduate School of Food Science and Technology, presents this certificate of appreciation to Joy A. Azarias for sharing her knowledge as a speaker in the webinar entitled Unveiled, the Food Industry in Challenging Times. The topic, Foodborne Antimicrobial Resistance in the Food Chain, held this day, October 15, 2020. Signed by Dr. Maria Ligaya T. Braganza. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
We would also like to acknowledge our second speaker, Ms. Camille O. Ayuro. Dr. Zornosa, if you would. Your mic po, Dr. Zornosa.
The Philippine Women's University, in appreciation for the sharing of your know-how and knowledge, the Graduate School of Food Science and Technology presents the Certificate of Appreciation to Ms. Camille O. Ayuro for sharing the knowledge as a speaker in the webinar entitled Unveiled, the Food Industry in Challenging Times, for the topic Consumer Awareness, Food Safety on Delivery of Fresh Produce Purchased Online, held this day, October 15, 2020. From Dr. Maria Ligaya T. Braganza. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Zornosa.
Okay, so
Thank you, Ms. Camille, and thank you, Dr. Zornosa, for joining us this morning.
Welcome.
Again, thank you, ma'am. So, thank you to our viewers for joining us today in this session of Unveiled, the food industry in challenging times. This session has been very educational, and we are very happy that everyone actively participated and joined in our poll questions and Q&A session. So we also love to hear your feedbacks The link to our webinar evaluation form is available in the description box. So please accomplish them to be eligible for the e-certificate. You may also get your certificate of attendance by scanning the QR code shown on your screen or by typing in the link also shown in your screen. So, Miss Naj?
Okay, our three-part webinar series will continue this afternoon with session 2 entitled Innovations of Food Service in the Present Time at 2 o'clock p.m. and tomorrow morning with the third session entitled Today Future, Adapting to the New Normal in the Food Industry at 9 o'clock a.m.
So once more, thank you to our speakers, Miss Joy and Miss Camille, for that two very interesting talks to open our webinar series, Unveiled, the Food Industry in Challenging Times, presented by the Philippine Women's University and School of Food Science and Technology. On behalf of our team, thank you everyone for joining us, and we do hope to see you in the next sessions. This has been Aina Grace Fajardo.
And this is Nadya Patricia Sauza. Have a good rest of your day.